Hello everyone, salam, namaste, adab, and welcome to today's event at Indian Diaspora, Washington, D.C. Metro. Today, the topic is Citizen Under Siege. This is also the title of a book that Professor Ganesh Devy, Padmashree Professor Ganesh Devy has written. It is a collection of essays between 2014 to 2025. As you know, Professor Ganesh Devy has appeared here. I think this is his third time, as I remember, maybe second. He is a former professor of English at University of Baroda. He's a very well-known cultural activist, anthropologist, linguist, thinker, a literary critic, and whatnot. He's a very well-known scholar in India. He will be formally introduced by Professor Purvanandaji, who is a professor of Hindi at University of Delhi. He is a literary and cultural critic, a writer himself, and he's very well-known columnist in almost all the leading dailies and weeklies of India. He is a political dissident. He talks about civil rights. He's a very brave man. I salute him quite often. And the concluding remarks will be given by Mr. Pushparaj Deshpande, if he joins at some point. He's the founding director of Samruddha Bharat, an editor of Rethinking India series and Reshaping India series. So welcome you all. As Pushparaj Deshpande just said that I'm here, so that's very good sign. So let's begin with Professor Apurvanandaji for the formal introductory remarks.
Thank you, Razi Saab. Thank you for organizing this talk by Professor Ganesh Devy and having me again on this platform. I think it's my second time, or I have joined other discussions, but this is my second time as a panelist or speaker. And this is a very important conversation that you have managed to continue in these very, very uncertain and volatile times where nothing seems to be stable. In these unstable times, to keep oneself stable and to keep oneself focused in itself is a challenge. So while talking about this stability, I must say that Professor Ganesh Devy is one of those friends who have been very steady in his pursuit of truth and of, I would say, a pursuit of togetherness in society and justice in society. He is a literary theorist, anthropologist, linguist. He wears many hats. He's a cultural activist. He doesn't shy away from calling himself a cultural activist. Many academics don't like that because it then diminishes them as a serious academic. But he is a serious academic, and also one of our most important public voices we have in India. The book that we have, Citizen Under Siege, is a collection of essays that he has authored between 2014 and 2025. The significance of 2014, the number and the year cannot be overstated. All of us are aware of that. India started getting transformed after 2014. There were many friends who had not suspected that this was the turn India was going to take, and this was a very decisive turn, and a turn which it would be very difficult to undo or to bring back India to the path it was moving on after 1947. So Professor Devy has chronicled, I would say, the times we are living in, and the essays cover a range of issues and concerns we face. It would be good, Professor Devy had asked me not to speak in the beginning, but to respond to his remarks. So I'd stop here and request Professor Devy to make his presentation, and after that, if need be, and if time allows, I'll definitely respond to his remarks. Welcome, Professor Devy.
Good evening, everybody in India. Good morning, everybody in the United States. And good noon or good afternoon to everybody who's in between these two continents. I'm grateful that the Indian Diaspora Washington DC Metro thought of asking me to present my thoughts on what was initially proposed was socio-cultural crossroads. India at socio-cultural crossroads. There was indeed a time when literature was my primary interest, and I would have plunged at such an invitation, but I hesitated, thinking of the changed times, and I thought I would rather present some of my observations on our time today. So, in my brief presentation, I will put across to you 10 of my observations and one of my desires, a desire. This is a short. I have tried to write down these observations. And I requested Professor Purvanand, who is one of the most eminent thinkers of India today, to reflect on these when I finish making the presentation. So in a way, this lecture will turn into a dialogue. And I'll be very happy if Mr. Pushparaj Deshpande, one of the rising stars of the Indian social intellectual horizon, joins in that discussion. So it is going to be a conversation between three thinkers, of which I have been privileged to be in a way, the anchor. My first observation is that citizen was an essential element in the classical conceptualization of representative governments. For instance, the first exponent of such a government, that is what we call democracy today, John Locke, had this idea of political society, which had a meaning very different from what we have today for the term political. So Locke's idea of political society revolved around interrelated citizens who would care for providing economic security and would contain interference by any brute force, including any overwhelming authority of the state. Till then, the people in England were His Majesty's or Her Majesty's subject people. It was then when they thought of forming such a political, what Locke called political society, they started gradually becoming citizens. In India, people were praja, and during the colonial times, they were described as the subject people. It was after we got our constitution that the praja became nagarika. idea that John Locke had, that rather than depending on a nature's law, which can be absurd, which cannot be questioned, and which does not have rational justification, instead of depending on nature's law in the sphere of deciding how people should be ruled, it would be much better to bring in a law for which people come together and give a consent. So it is consensual law which becomes the foundation of the state. And it is these people who, while being greedy by themselves, will not be so greedy so as to cause damage to others. That is, the political society that Locke had imagined was based on the hope that individuals can think rationally about the collective security as well as individual security, and therefore come into a contract, a social contract, as Rousseau was to call it later, and form an entity, a state, and its people. And these people were to be citizens. In India, we were Praja under the Rajas. We became Nagariks under the Prajasattak Rashtra, thanks to the constitution. Today's date, which is the 20, just a few days before we move to celebrating the memory of the making of the constitution on the 26th November. Therefore, I begin with this idea that a citizen is the foundation of the state. Citizen indeed has been the founder of the state in many historical instances in the United Kingdom, in the United States of America, and in the Republic of India. I will now turn to the next observation. That is, Praja became Nagarik, subject people became citizens through the process of what we call democracy and a political arrangement. So it is this political arrangement that facilitated the rise of citizen as against Praja. Historically, in the former colonies, the dominating powers uh, left those colonies by giving some semblance of democracy as a parting gift. This started in the 1930s when Britain in particular decided to withdraw from its colonies because they had become economically unviable. Britain decided to introduce this relatively new system of governance in most of those colonies. Later, of course, after the fall of the USSR, when the world became unipolar, there was a hope in the Western world that the earlier parts of the USSR would become sturdy democracies. But democracy has now gone through a sea change, or as Shakespeare would have said, full 5 fathom thy father lies. These are the pearls that were his eyes. What were the living eyes have only become shining pearls, but not organic living entities. In India, this process of formation of democracy was in 1947 to 1950. This was also the time when India was trying to make itself a nation. it became a nation. So becoming democracy and becoming nation happened at the same time in the case of India and other South Asian countries that were at one time aligned with India. On the 26th November 1949, the instrument of making India a nation and its people citizens at the same time took birth after the long process of the freedom struggle and the process of the Constituent Assembly and its debates. Though democracy is relatively new for India, I mean, forget the talk about India being the mother of democracy. That word can be stretched far too much to include practically everything. But I'm thinking of democracy in terms of this specific social contract where citizens' interest is paramount within a state. The state could be a nation state as well. My next observation is decline of democracy is by now a widespread global phenomenon. In the last year's report on democracy by The Economist showed that less than 10% of the countries in the world qualify for full democracy. Many more are seen as some kind of deficient democracies, yet many more are seen as mixed or hybrid states, and some are also seen as outright autocratic dictatorial nations. The Economist has been bringing out this report on democracy, status of democracy, since 2006. And if one were to put uh, uh, a comparative graph from 2006 to 2024, which was the last report they produced, one sees that there is a sharp decline in the number of nations that qualify for the term democracy. This is a phenomenon which is part of the reality of our time. This decline of democracy, which is now a widespread global phenomenon, entailed in the metamorphosis of the role of citizen. The idea of citizen stands morphed and considerably diminished as against that of the idea of the nation, which seems to have been over glorified and adorned with myth, legend, and excessive pride. So, the paradox is while some of the nations can claim that they are democracies, the people in those nations do not think that in real life they have the democratic space and freedom and liberties. I turn to my next observation. The repeated, continuous, and pointless enumeration of citizens through a unilateral decision or unilateral decisions and without the collective or individual consent of citizens is a peculiarly newly invented method being used by states towards diminishing the autonomy of citizens individually as well as collectively. Here I would like to refer to the March 2025 resolution of the United Nations Committee on Censuses. And that committee has very clearly stated that the census process in most countries, which was initially thought of as a process to help planning and delivering the rights and the goods that citizens claim.
Something went wrong, sir. कोई issue हो रहा उनको.
No, I'm here. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
जी.
I will. March 2025 resolutions of the United Nations Committee on Census indicates that the census data, which was initially imagined be for the sake of delivering the goals, the goals of progressive world, is now being used to intimidate and control and transact people. So this method of counting, enumeration, giving numbers, that method seems to be a modern method, a modern democratic guillotine. The next I want to say is that, and this is related, an advancement in data technology has served the states towards imposing biometric identification and profiling, and is made compulsory, and people are constantly being coerced to get into the regime of biometric identification and profiling. When this technology takes the next step forward within a couple of years or next few years, it will well be possible for authorities to generate virtual avatars of the citizens, relegating the citizens themselves to a largely obliterated presence. And this is frightening. The virtual reality, which is inviting everybody to form one's own avatar in that sphere, in that world, uh, that seems attractive as a toy, as a technology, as an idea, as fantasy fulfillment. But the states are using this Machiavellistically to create some kind of avatars of citizens, but thereby distancing the citizens themselves. Your digital number of citizenship has today become far more important than the citizenship or the citizen herself or himself. I now, the next point I want to present is surveillance by the state is another method used by all states to undercut and reduce the autonomy of citizens. And the surveillance techniques are being transacted between nations, state government, national governments, uh, with a great bonhomie, and without and forgetting that governments cannot actually impose surveillance on each and every citizen unless there was some serious aberration, serious crime, serious crisis, serious emergency. But this has become common. It is normalized. And states are now watching what people eat, how they dress, who they meet, and mainly what they think, which initially in any formulation of idea of democracy was not the matter of active interest and hyperactive intervention by the state. Now, these minimum liberties in cultural choices, has come to be a luxury for any individual citizen. Next, at the same time, states have surrendered to big corporates almost willingly policy and decision making, which were in the past sacred prerogatives of the state. They are now, the states are now supple and heavily biased towards the advantage of corporate entities. The result is normalization of massive exploitation of natural resources, water and land. And the point I'm making is not about economy, it is about the status of citizens. In the past, citizens had high stakes in the resources commons. I call these resources commons, such as forests, rivers, mountains. And these forests, rivers, mountains were governed by the state as its territorial sovereignty, but they all had intimate links with the lived life of citizens. That link has been snapped, and the resources common are turned into resources proper. And that's where citizens who are rooted in a philosophy of harmony between nature and man have suffered the most. Next, since many countries are controlled by non-state actors, and you decide who is a non-state actor, you will have a long list of these non-state actors. If you pile together statistics, portrayal of different countries today. Since many countries are controlled by non-state actors, hyper-nationalism is used by them, the non-state actors and the countries, as a mask in order to gain legitimacy for their regimes. Citizens formed and constituted nations, but the hyper-nationalism has given the idea of nation a new dimension in which the fantasies of the non-state actors have replaced the dreams of citizens. And what are the dreams of citizens? Perhaps in the shortest possible time, one can say that the 1931 Karachi resolution drafted by Mahatma Gandhi, which later became foundation for the fundamental rights as stated in the Indian Constitution, reflect the dreams of citizens. But they are being replaced by the fantasies of non-state actors in the mask of this hyper-nationalism. Next, hyper-nationalism coupled with increased international and intranational migrations have resulted in raising barriers for such movements, and also hatred and violence directed towards the migrants. The unprecedented othering of outsiders has led to human societies opting to live more and more within their respective ghettos, closed and myopic. The emotional stress and hyped fear of infiltration have led to lowering of the horizons of empathy all around us. The last point I want to make is citizens in many countries have tried to resist fear, intimidation, surveillance, unfreedom, and empathyless isolation through spontaneous protests, and in some cases, violent uprising. However, the light that shines on such movements of resistance has invariably been short lived. I will now turn to my wish. The citizen under siege has to invent methods of regaining the dignity and presence by going back to the root of democracy rather than going at the apparent features, the outer forms of democracy. Democracy was, is, and shall be a framework for negotiating change and transformation in an evolutionary way. It rules out the need for a sudden revolution. Fortunately, the Constitution of India provides within itself space for resisting the siege. I hope Indian thinkers, citizens, activists, dissidents, and Indian people in various places of authority will realize that the time for transformation has come, but that transformation has space within the Constitution. And without distorting the Constitution, one can actually bring back the lost dream of democracy. I will now request Professor Purvanand to reflect um, in whichever way he would like to on what I say. And after he has completed, I will request my friend Dr. Pushparaj Deshpande to reflect on what I said. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Devy. It was a very comprehensive account of the journey of the concept of citizen or citizenship. So thank you for doing that. And also the pressures that this concept is now being subjected to, the stress that it has been under for quite some time. As you rightly said, that it's not a matter of only one country, it is across countries, and it's an international phenomenon, so to say. But in the context of our own country, India, I have been thinking about this notion of citizen or citizenship for a long time, because what the points that you raised, surveillance, taking away of agency of people from them, and in a way, now it's a reverse journey. We became citizens or Nagarik from our earlier state of Rajahood or subjecthood. So this is what we achieved, and yes, Constitution gave us that, but that was a journey we made during our freedom struggle. As you rightly said, that the 1931 resolution became the basis of our Constitution, and the notion of fundamental rights was a typical Indian innovation. But now this notion of rights is being derided. We are being told that this very idea of rights has destroyed India, and what we now need to do is to instill sense of duty in the people towards the state. So people would now be subservient to the entity called the state, whereas we thought earlier while growing up that we were sovereignty lied with the people, and the state and nation they were creatures of these people. But now the people are being told that they are creatures of the state or creatures of the nation. That is the reverse journey that we have made. But the oppression that citizens are now being subjected to, and this is something we need to think about, why is it that the majority of the people don't feel it? Sometimes we are told that after a point, people will rise and revolt. But I wonder when that point is going to come, and are people really going to revolt? And the problem is, Professor Devy, and you know it very well, because you have observed a society being torn asunder in Gujarat, and very painfully, and you have recorded and intervened in that. When, if we call citizen, now it's not one citizen, two citizens. One section feels that it enjoys all the rights and all the benefits that citizens should have, whereas the other section must not have these. So the first point that you mentioned about interrelatedness, who is a citizen? Citizen is cannot be understood without this concept of interrelatedness. But now this has gone, and we don't feel interrelated, and we feel that the other, as you said, through the process of othering, we have created a section which we see as antagonistic to our interest. So if that section is being oppressed, and we don't feel the pain of that section. And what has been remarkable about the government that we have since 2014, that it has been able to convince the majority, and the majority, when I say majority is constituted mainly of Hindus, by Hindus. It has been able to persuade and convince them that it is their government, and whatever it is doing on their behalf. So they don't mind the rights of Muslims being taken away or Christians being taken away, because they think that it's their government. And therefore, the government goes on enacting new laws, new rules, which are gradually taking away the rights of the people. The new labor laws that it has just announced, taking away the rights of the people gradually, and thereby eroding the very notion of citizenship. But the anguish and the pain and anger it should have caused, we don't see it anywhere. If you leave aside farmers' movement or some other movement, we don't see any large-scale opposition to this erosion of the notion of citizenship in India. And why has it happened? Because Indian citizenry has now been divided sharply into two sections, and the majority thinks that the minority is antagonistic to it, and it would be good if it is eradicated. So this is the state we are in. Whether we would be able to overcome this, I'm not very sure. The recent results of the assembly elections in Bihar confirm my fears that now we have reached a state where people, and we have reached a state where people have started, and there's a new common sense, which is very different from the common sense that Nagarik should have, or the agency of Nagrik should have.
Well, thank you.
These are my
We are
thoughts.
together. We are together in these concerns, and thank you that we agree on the basics. It is the way ahead that we have to. We'll come to that. May I request Pushparaj to give what your thoughts come to your mind after listening to these 10 observations I put across? Agreement, disagreement, addition, deletion, whatever.
Thank you, Professor Devy, Professor Purvanand, and Dr. Razi. Of course, I also thank the Indian diaspora, Washington, D.C. Metro, and our friends in the USA for joining us early in the US. I completely agree with both the comments that were made by Professor Purvanand and Professor Devy. The state has become, as you rightly pointed out, Devi sir, the barbarian state versus the Aristotelian and the Gandhian state, as we see it, where the state had responsibilities to us, the citizens. That entire social contract has gone for a toss, and in a sense that the fact that the state had responsibilities towards us has sort of taken a backseat, which is why, since the citizen has become peripheral to this social contract, and both the state and power has become an end to itself, what has happened is that civic rights and freedoms that were so-called constitutionally guaranteed to us have also become dispensable. I completely agree with you, Professor Devi, on that. We've now been the duties that are being expected of us to perform for the state and non-state actors are clearly being prescribed by non-state actors. So, and the state is being used, like the Nazis did, as a means to enforce that expectation of us performing duties. So I completely agree with that. What I wanted to add specifically is a structural point. And this is perhaps a transient because this would be of interest to our colleagues in the DC and the wider American area. What is happening in India has happened in the last decade or so, has also happened elsewhere. There is active collusion. Yes, the global South and India was the lab where the populist autocrat toolkit was, the playbook was perfected. We have been dealing with our version of President Trump and Nigel Farage and Gear Wilders and even Bolsonaro for the last 11 years. But this is both bottom up and top down, and this active collusion between the right-wing forces, which I'm calling the right, is something that I wanted to draw your attention. Professor Devi, I'm sure you have been working on this, have been lecturing on this. The fact that they've been working to establish a lasting global far-right movement. Think about the things that they have unleashed: the misinformation culture wars, authoritarianism, these primordial rules of statecraft. All of this is happening by design, and I don't think that we are sufficiently, when I say progressive parties and civil society, are sufficiently seized of that. And this is why the reason I want to flag this is because I would like to round it off with some kind of operational takeaway for all of us, if possible. And just as a question to flag to you, for our colleagues here, they have very clearly weaponized their diasporas, especially in the US. Now, I don't agree with the assessment that and propaganda that they have they have constantly propagated, that the entire diaspora is supportive of the right and everything that they stand for. It's a very narrow section. I think second generation, third generation diasporas, and surveys have time and again stood testament to what I'm saying. They don't believe, the second generation certainly doesn't believe in what the BJP stands for. But it is important to flag the fact that the Indian diaspora, which is perhaps one of the most richest and most embedded diasporas, has been funding the BJP and the RSS extensively. Just in the US alone, I know in 2015, not an election year, about $158.9 million were sent from just the US, 7 Sangh Parivar affiliates from the US to fund and support right-wing causes in India. They have propagated xenophobia, racism, crony capitalism, bunch of other things that have created problems for us. And those funds, many of those funds are used to capture and twist public institutions as a theater for ideological warfare. Now, this small section of the diaspora, and let us not be confusing this current time when the diaspora is being spurned by the far right in the US, but they have been active in the International Democratic Union, the National Conservatism Conference, the Conservative Political Action Conference, the Heritage Foundation, and the movement. Even in Project 2025, they have been active in framing that. Now, look at the contrast with our side. And this is the last thing I'll say, I'll stop here. We progressives are calcified in time, both programmatically as well as operationally. We have abandoned the center and we are conflating, and this is primarily the political parties, we are conflating centrism with blandness, which is why there is this triumph of mediocrity. There is a bunch of policy incrementalism. There's a lack of an inspiring alternative paradigm, and we don't have systemic solutions, which is why the public seems to think that the right, especially when I say the public, I mean the silent majority, they seem to think that the right at least is convinced of its agenda, has a better plan. Now, this lack of coordination and political will is actually enabling the right even further. If you see what is happening in UK, even in India, or in Netherlands, or in Germany, progressive centrist parties and civil society forces are still given into symbolic protests and petition politics and so on and so forth. And what is happening is that they're not being, they're trying to out, at least the parties, some parties are trying to outmaneuver the right from the right. You can't out Modi, you can't out Trump, you can't out reform, right? In the UK. So the point is that until and unless we have a serious substantive conversation on how we can start redressing these systemic fault lines, changing operational methodologies, and working collaboratively to tackle these long-standing problems, we are not going to be able to resolve the very real problems that Professor Devy and Professor Apurvanand have pointed out. Yes, they are currently ascendant and hegemonic, but I don't think that this is unbeatable. Today we are analog players in a digital world, but we can catch up. And I know this because I genuinely feel that the right is fracturing. We can capitalize on this. Of course, we need to just get our act together and start doing things that, I mean, to quote Martin Luther King, we need to be as organized. Those who love peace need to be as organized as those who love war. Just adapting that from to this particular instance. I think there is much that we can do. And the fact that there are so many people here listening to Professor Devy and Professor Apurvanand and trying to seriously think about how we can work together, I have much hope in the fact that we can collaboratively first stem the tide and then push it back. I'll stop here, Professor Devy, and I mean, if there are any questions, I would love to, of course, engage with anyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Pushparaj. Thank you. That was brilliant. And what Professor Apurvanand said is thought-provoking, because that question, how? We know everything is wrong, but how? And Pushparaj also, raised that and laid before us some ideas, some hope, and we are all together in that. But if I were to simplify this, I mean, if I were to put your perceptions, both of your perceptions of both of you, in simpler words for my understanding, I would say not just in India, but in every country that tried to be democracy and was democracy for a while at least, there is a need to restate, there is need to re-envision the idea of democracy. Democracy is a constantly evolving system. I said it rules out revolutions because it is very strong in evolution. It has changed every 10 years, though the name has remained there. And we will have to start we will have to start stating a very powerful new idea of democracy, people who apparently are going with the government because they're normally complacent, fearful, and respectful of the state, and engrossed in their own livelihood struggles in most times, and therefore no special extra energy for thinking of the nation and the society. But when a new idea comes up, as it came up at the end of the 18th century with Raja Ram Mohan Rai bringing Brahmo Samaj, all religions are equal and India must become a progressive state, a forward-looking nation, people suddenly mobilized around that. Or when Gandhi came and spoke of self-assertion as independent Desh, people got galvanized and they mobilized. It is not with the all the states put together had a lot more money, and the British had a lot more brutal power and authority with them. But Gandhi's idea worked. Uh, so did Ambedkar's idea of annihilation of caste worked in times when nobody was really thinking of how to get rid of caste. And there's a new sense of identity, new sense of right, and that presence can never be overlooked anymore. Though the ultimate goals of independence or equality or rationality have not reached. So, a new idea of democracy. It's not an idea of how to win a certain election. I mean, that political parties do craftily, cleverly, sometimes successfully, sometimes pathetically. But a new social, cultural, political thought amalgamated, and particularly in the context of ecological future. And therefore, I think we have within the constitution ways to move forward towards that new idea of democracy. And perhaps we can have another discussion on what are the ways in the constitution which will allow us to change the regime but keep the constitution. I mean, really, in again, these simpler words, if the regime is there, the constitution won't be there. So we have to think of how the constitution can be protected, but not as a set box, but as a dynamic system of thought which allows transformation of democracy. So I would have continued to speak more on this, but time is over. We have just 2 minutes, and I want to thank both Professor Purvanand and uh, uh, and Pushparaj Deshpande for giving their time and joining me in thinking about this issue. And I want to thank the, Washington D.C.
Sir, you are not going yet. We have a question and answer session for the audience. A brief
to give me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very enlightening and wonderful. Let me turn to question and answer session. I have to host it because our co-hosts are missing. They are vacationing in India. So before
Please,
that,
does it please allow any three of us to respond to those questions?
yes, sir, yes. I asked Purnanandji to join in. He is missing in action right now. His video is turned off, so he will soon join. So before that, just an announcement for coming Saturday, and then we go for question answer. Haris, can you show the uh, from a
जी मैडम जी
well, it's from very serious political to a very important person's life and his contribution through the film media. Guru Dutt, he was considered the most sensitive and conscientious person in the film industry, upbringing the most sensitive issues, political as well as cultural. If you remember Sahabibi Ghulam and Pyasa, that itself says a lot. So next Saturday we are going to remember Guru Dutt. Danish Iqbal is the one who's narrating all these series. So now take it out. take out this poster, Haris. Okay. Now, please, everyone, I have unmuted the icon. You can unmute yourself, raise your hand to ask brief question. Don't make long discussions. So first is Dr. Imtiaz. Imtiaz.
Thank you, Razi Saab. Thank you, all three speakers, for sharing your thoughts and enlightening us about democracy and role of citizens. Is not decline of democracy mainly because of decline of the character of the citizen? By that I mean citizen can be bought by money, can be intimidated, can be swayed by hyper-nationalism, can be swayed by distortion of religion. And the second related question is, people who are in power, even in a democratic setup, they manage to stay in power by hijacking the democracy. So what can be done to effectively counter? And I may add, I'm happy to note that Professor Deshpande injected a note of optimism. I liked it.
Is that a question, Intasa?
The question is, the decline in democracy is due to, I'm convinced of that, decline in the character of the citizen. Recently, I watched Ken Burns' War of Independence, and the character of the citizens at that time, Washington and all his people there, was so different from the character of citizens of USA now.
Okay.
As far as political awareness is concerned and social ideas are concerned.
All right, got it. So, Deshpandeji, now since Devi Saab and Purvanandji are a little bit off the screen, the onus is on you.
Thank you, Dr. Razi. Imtiaji, I'm just Pushpraj, not professor. I mean, certainly not as distinguished or lettered as Professor Puranan and Professor Devy. But I work very closely with progressive forces, both in the political and the civil society realm here. This is a question actually that has seized a lot of us, and clearly we are grappling around in the dark with this. Yes, I think the economic pressures that have been unleashed by the 2008 financial crisis have pushed, at least in India, people more fearfully towards traditional norms of social cohesion. And the silent majority has and the BJP has weaponized that particular reversion to caste, communal, religious bonds. That is certainly there. But I also want to flag, as Professor Devy has also pointed out, big tech has played a big role in sort of exacerbating this fault line, and the way they have shaped mass consciousness. So in a sense, yes, the silent majority is fearfully turned towards traditional norms, but I wouldn't go so far as to blame the citizen. This is a social collective anxiety that has set in. Progressive parties have failed to create and put forth a convincing narrative that alleviates that particular problem. It is very easy to mobilize people on hate, anger, violence, and as Professor Purvanand said, to other someone else. Yes, it's very easy to do that, but the onus is on us to give a more convincing narrative to sort of bring people together, to mobilize them in a Gandhian sense for love and fraternal bonds. I mean, the Bharat Jodo Yatra was a beginning. It was a very interesting experiment, very resource intensive. It's an experiment. It worked. Shaheen Bagh protests worked. The farmers' protests worked. But we need to sort of scale up. The idea would be, how do we try to scale up such programmatic projects so as to be able to tell people that, you know what, we can be better than the sum of our collectively than our individual parts, that we are better together, that we can create this symphony from this thing. So that is the challenge. The programmatic challenge is, how do we speak to the people? They have problems, and we've been seeing this in election after election. That is not just a communication challenge, but it's also a normative challenge that we need to address amongst ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next question is from the chat box. I can read. Mukti Sanyal has written, what evidence is there the right is fracturing? I think you made some misstatement like the right is fracturing. So he's asking about is there any real evidence of it? Deshpandeji?
Let me answer.
Of course, yeah, any of you, yeah. Ji.
Pushparaj mentioned that he sees, gaps there opening up, fault lines in the right. And he is absolutely right, in my opinion. That is, over the last 10 years, with the ascendancy of the right, uh, we have to assess whether it is the failure of democracy or the rise of the right. Both the two are different phenomena. And if the right had one global ideology, democracy has an ideology, it has a philosophical foundation. The right, if the right had one global ideology, it could have sustained itself. But there doesn't seem to be a centered, a singular, a cohesive ideology there. There is a right economics, and that economics says, unlike the socialist economics, that you don't have to wait for your progress for going by going through a very gradual process, but everybody, according to their capacity, in a room, like animals packed in a room having very high ceiling, and whichever animal can jump higher will get higher. That kind of, this is precisely what Locke was fighting at that time. That is, to create a political society. Locke said that humans are greedy, no doubt about it. I mean, there's no human except for Jesus Christ and Mahatma Gandhi and a few Gautam Buddha and a few exceptions among ordinary people also. But by and large, this is the basic nature which Marx had recognized too. Gandhi had recognized that. Gandhi said, if greed is excess, it turns into violence. So humans like to acquire for their self-preservation, which is the evolutionary nature of human species. Self-preservation is at the heart of life of a species. But to allow a rule of a jungle's rule in the economic sphere is what the right accepts as its economic ideology. And Locke was precisely fighting that and said, unless people agree on securing for themselves, but also allowing others to secure themselves, then a political society is created. What I'm trying to say is that the right ideology can remain, has become, and can remain a dominant economic view of the world, but it cannot crystallize into a lasting political ideology. Hitler or Mussolini, they're seen as aberrations, but there cannot be permanence of that kind of political setup all over the world for a very long time. And for that ideology to become fully political, they will have to think of the others as well. And the moment they start thinking of the others, then all that they are doing starts looking wrong, like hatred and scorn and intimidation and suppression. So if they try to put their economics and ethics together, that's a huge contradiction which cannot lead to their politics. That's so. Therefore, I see that these forces will necessarily go through fragmentation and getting at each other's throats. I mean, if you look at Trump's conversations with other countries, precisely that's what is happening. Thank you. Pushpara, sorry for your questions.
All right. So next question is Dr. Seige. Say. Please ask the question.
Yes. Sorry, I was trying to unmute me. Good talk. That's a quick question or observation. Last decade, just want to know how much degradation on educational, cultural, science happened, and what is going to be the end result, because eventually it's going to affect the whole society in general. And of course, education and culture and day-to-day things will be affected. Can you give up your talk?
It's attack on reason.
Who's talking? Professor Devy? Deshpande ji. What? Professor Devy, are you in? I think there was an issue. He's trying to rejoin.
Sorry, I've rejoined.
Okay.
Sorry so much for Digital India. A lot of gaps here.
Pushpara speaking. Yeah, Pushpara, you want to answer? Yes, please go ahead.
No, so please go ahead. Please go ahead, sir. Professor Devy.
Okay. The hallmark of the right regimes is distaste for reason, rationality. And this attack on reason is apparent through their attack on institutions of science and institutions of learning, where questioning is at the heart. And therefore, this tremendous pressure on universities put by the Trump administration in the US, and fiddling with the textbooks in India, and delegitimizing institutions like the National Statistical Institute and the Historical Council for Historical Research, ICSSR, Social Science Research, and so on, and putting too much pressure on the directors of IITs, etc. All of this is one piece, and that is anti-science, anti-rationality attitude, which suits the right. Democracy took birth along with the birth of rationality. And so we have at least reason, rationality on our side. And though it is unfortunately true that educational institutions and scientific and cultural institutions have come under cloud and gone through a lot of harassment, the solution is not in just fighting for any individual institution, but fighting for reason and rationality in our time. And that is a twin of democracy. I mean, in Europe, it was the decline of the Catholic and the rise of the Protestant faith, which resulted in the emergence of democracy system and a new kind of economic wisdom in Europe. So we have to revisit that, but we cannot redo that. We cannot just repeat that. It will become ritualistic. We'll have to reinvent for ourselves a new meaning of economy, which is deeply wedded to ecology. We will have to think of democracy not as the government for humans, a system for humans, but all life forms. And I think if we move in that direction, or what people call, in some people have started calling it cosmocracy, from demos to cosmos, I think if our vision changes, then many things will become possible and many fights can be won. But
There's some issue. All right, have a pause. Let me bring Ambassador Ishrat Aziz for his comments. He has written some comment I can read, but Ishrat Bhai, are you in?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you turn on?
Sorry.
Can you turn
Yes,
on?
I'm here.
Yeah. Can you
If you
turn on
like, I can
video?
get my picture also.
Yes, yes. Put your picture,
Yeah.
not put yours. Yeah. Where are you? Okay. Please ask.
Yes, I'm here.
1 second. I do not know how to. Okay. Please ask question.
Hello.
Yes.
Razi?
Yes. Ask. Please ask the question. Yeah. Or the comment.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? I am. There's some issue with your side, I guess. You cannot hear me?
Hello.
Okay, so there's some issue, I guess. So let me read his comments. Conceptually, we should dealing citizenship and identity. The relationship between the citizen and the state should be direct and not through identity. Identity is personal, not political. So Deshpande ji, or
Hello.
yeah, you can't hear me, so there's no point, I think. But what happened to our two speakers?
Very much here, and Dr. Apurvanand is also there, if I'm not wrong.
Yes,
Yes,
so he's not picking up.
citizenship is the legal affiliation,
Ji,
but to be a citizen is a political substance, and the two need not be conflated. One can be citizenship, one can have citizenship of any country of one's choice or the country choice, but one can still be a citizen wherever one goes, and that's a big distinction.
all
That is
right.
by citizen who knows that she or he is the one who constitutes the state, and the state is for citizens and not citizens for the state. In that sense, I'm talking using the term citizen.
Okay, sir, now there is another question from Shrikant Chopra ji. In every democratic setup, all citizens have rights, but also corresponding responsibilities. How do you see this pairing? What are the constitutional expectations from Indian citizens?
Well, rights and democracies, rights and responsibilities are a package which is there uh, from the birth of the idea of democracy, all through. And the responsibilities are to protect other citizens' rights. They become the responsibilities of every citizen. That is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that the responsibilities are such that no citizen should praise for her or his rights. That's another attitude. And you have to choose between which of the two, that is, responsibilities defined by rights as the first, or rights defined as responsibilities as the first. It will all depend on your own political inclination and wisdom. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing to what Professor Devy said here, Dr. Razi?
Yes, yes,
Please.
please.
No. In complete agreement with Professor Devy, I want to link Dr. Ambedkar and Gandhi. So to boil this down to what Professor Devy said even further, basically the two core duties that I feel that the Constitution mandates on us is Maitri, fraternity, and Karuna, compassion. I mean, Maitri is being talked about by Ambedkar, Karuna is being talked about by Gandhi, and this is basically developing that fraternal bond and cultivating a constitutional consciousness is the primary duty of citizens as well as all progressive forces who want to adhere to the constitutional idea of India. So I hope that just add.
Well, there is another question. I mean, I have to read because this guy is somehow missing. From Mr. Victor Ghalib Beg. He's saying, what role do the application of historical grievances, race and religion play in evaporating democratic values? I mean, he's probably alluding to what the BJP quite often, you know, um, says about the victim, part. So, what role do the application of historical grievances, um, race and religion plays? And we are seeing it. So, do we have to say much? I mean, you can, if you want to elaborate, please.
The hyper nationalism creates the bogey of nation against the power, the collective power of citizens. And that always rests on an idea, a very strange idea of nation that somebody's made. In Hitler's case, it was the Aryan supremacy nation kind of. For this particular instance in India, that idea was floated by Savarkar, who said that the Pitrubhumi and the Punyabhumi must be the same for a citizen. Now, that is not the idea in the Constitution of India. The Indian Constitution clearly says that whoever belong to India, I mean, on that particular day, is the citizen, and it is nation for everybody. Everybody is nation. So, this hyper nationalism is a mask, and not a deep conviction, in my opinion, that is brought to bear upon the regime controlled by every non-state actor. When a non-state energy force actors get control of the government, then they start putting forward hyper nationalism as a kind of a mask. And that, since it is hyper, it is always faulty at heart. So, India, fortunately, South Asia, fortunately, has a very long tradition of Sufism, of love, of Kabir, Mira, Tukaram, Gandhi, Tagore, Ambedkar, and they cannot be wiped out. I'm not saying easily; they just cannot be wiped out. They are the permanence of India, the permanence, the constants of India, from Buddha all the way to Ambedkar, from Upanishads all the way to Tagore, Kabir all the way to Gandhi. They are the constants of India. If they are clouded, the clouds will go. And this is not just a fond hope, but it's in my opinion, it's a good reading of history and the prospecting for the future.
Let me ask Dr. Sayyid Amir to join. Amir Bhai?
Thank you. Please forgive me, I missed consider part of your talk. I was having problem with logging in the Zoom. Ultimately, when it allowed me, it gave me a new name, which is test. So we have to try to change that. What I was wondering that over the centuries, great people, Mahatma Gautam Buddha, Prophet Muhammad, Mahatma Gandhi, and others have preached amity, cooperation, tolerance, all these virtues. They don't seem to have made any difference. I mean, is there something in our DNA which pushes us and forces us to always identify the other, which is, I mean, what's happening in India or in many other countries? It seems that humanity always manages to find the other and to hate or discriminate against. And all these lofty prophets and ideals have not succeeded in erasing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I understand the pain and concern, and I share it in full measure with you. One of the observations I had I had stated in when I spoke was as follows. I'm reading that brief a couple of sentences. Hypernationalism coupled with increased international and international migrations have resulted in increased barriers for such movements in every country, and also increase hatred and violence directed towards the migrants. The unprecedented othering of the so-called outsiders has led to human societies opting to live more and more within their respective ghettos, closed and myopic. The emotional stress, strain, and hyped form of infiltration, fear of infiltration, have led to lowering of the horizons of empathy all around us. Hannah Arendt has a wonderful analysis of this whole phenomenon, and in her opinion, she understood the German fascism because she had experienced it firsthand. In her opinion, a major minority in a country which is beginning to do economically well becomes the first target of hatred by fascist forces. Uh, but it is also, I mean, your question is also: do people invite upon themselves this kind of wrath? The life in the ghettos is what all of us have chosen, it seems to me. I mean, in our cities, all cities, I see the housing societies in the form of ghettos and not in the form of a city, not in the form of older towns, where different communities had spaces to meet and mix and understand each other. And that ghettoization is born out of fear of some kind of infiltration and attacks, and hyper nationalism keeps feeding into that all the time. Hyper nationalists don't tell us to go and attack, but they just keep terrifying us about some others coming and then yeah, polluting the purity of society and culture. And humans, I mean societies, can get led by this kind of auto suggestion. What when psychology tells, somebody tells you, oh, you're very smart, you start behaving like a smart person. Or this auto suggestion, the mass psychology of fascism is based on auto suggestion and feeding of fear of the others all the time, and that appears to have become norm for all governments in the world. If they're fascist 100% or fascist 60%, fascist 40%, that's where the appearance of citizen as a fearless person in ties, in bonds with nature and with society, is the need of the hour. So as Gandhi said, the change can begin with myself. Things will change if I change. If I become fearless and I develop empathy and compassion and start treating everybody else. I think if each one of us were to do it, no army in the world can terrify us. No army in the world can help the fascist forces to rule the world. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is Dr. Abdul Jabbar from Atlanta and from Tamil Nadu. Jabbar Saab.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful discussion. As far as I'm concerned, I think citizen under siege, also constitution under siege. That happened, I think, in India in 1975. There is an inflected point, I thought, in the democracy. A single person decided to suspend constitution, and then what happened following decades? What happened is the kind of birth of righteous, whatever the you can talk about BJP before the Judge Sung. So So what is the solution? I think in terms of you have identified problems, you resolve the recent problem as far as I'm concerned. I was a student when I was in 1975. At the same time, I'm a comrade. Comrade is my hero. This is the person, one person sitting in New Delhi, sent a note to the Chief Minister for Tamil Nadu, Araj Kamaraj. So this kind of things developed over the years, for the decades. I think that has to be in the context of, citizen under siege. I think the Constitution as a whole appears to be under siege everywhere. I think I've looked it up in the UK. They don't have a written constitution. Apparently, they seem to be doing okay in terms of this traditions, other kind of history within the society. Because constitution happened because there's a break from the past. But for the US, apparently, it is not a break. It's a natural, gradual evolution of the society. So what is your solution? How do you deal with the constitutional frameworks? How do you do that?
Deshpandeji, how not to get another emergency? That's what he's asking.
So that's a very valid point. I think Professor Devy should also come in, but very quickly before that, while I agree with the fact that there are two parts to this question, I want to dissect this in two parts. One is that power has an ideology to itself. I mean, this we have seen in governments time and again. And as Lord Acton said, power corrupts absolutely. So a lot of what happened in 75, and of course with Sanjay Gandhi, is now repeating itself. In fact, one could even go so far as to argue that the current prime minister is perhaps a mirror image of what Sanjay Gandhi would have been if he had continued this thing. So that is the electoral power, control over the nation state. That's one part of it. But there is a big difference between what happened in 75 and what happened today. Yes, there was complete mayhem in terms of deviations in terms of the application of institutional and constitutional norms in 75 today, but at least the social contract, more or less, at least at the end of this emergency, remained a North Pole. They did sort of shift, come back and allow democratic values to take precedence again. Today, there is a very different kind of application. Yes, power is being misused, institutions have been captured and are being misused, but the normative framework that has been overlaid over the constitution, that is circumscribing constitutional values, are something very antithetical to what our founders envisaged. And in fact, this is far more dangerous because the application of that ideological construct is now overlaid with how power is corrupted and deployed. So this is far more insidious as to how this can be circumvented, this is actually the bigger problem, because now I'm sort of engage in a little bit of a soothsayer kind of exercise. Imagine in 2029, progressive forces, the India Alliance or Congress Party or some version of that manages to come to power. The RSS and these forces, the Sangh Parivar, are infiltrators. They get inside the system like they did during the late 70s. They stay in the media, they stay in the bureaucracy. Look at what happened in 2012, and I've heard this directly from the former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Orders were given by him to vote for Palestine. The UN Undersecretary, the Permanent Secretary to India, abstained. Now he's a BJP minister. R.K. Singh was the Home Secretary that time. He started circumscribing the Home Ministry. The General of the Chief of Army Staff, General V.K. Singh, he started doing something that was fishy. This is something that is going to repeat. Now, the thing is, all of us are used to absolving, in a sense, our responsibilities to political parties and the state, thinking that they are the primary custodians of the constitutional framework, and it is their responsibility to embed it into society, cultivate a social constitutional consciousness. If anything, this incident, the last 11 years, proves that the responsibility is as much on us as it is on progressive parties. So the real challenge is, how do we recreate When I say Congress movement, I don't mean this as a Congress political party, but how do we recreate the Congress movement so that the system we are able to keep the system in check? Because as I said at the beginning, the system has a logic to itself. I've seen this in government. It works on a different ideological framework. It works to sustain itself. How can we, civil society organizations, people like Professor Devy, people like Professor Purvanan and others, constantly keep a check, become consciential not gatekeepers, but sort of conscience keepers of this constitution? That is the challenge. I'm not saying I have the answer, but I feel that some kind of bridge, a praxis between political parties and civil society and overlaid over the state would be perhaps sort of a sustainable solution to the RSS. But the real challenge I would see post 29 is to remove these sleeper cells. They will hibernate, and they will again come back next time they are in a position to start creating havoc, like they did in 2012. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
I mean, this question is extremely important, Mr. Jabbar. And it is also the right time to ask, that is just a few days before 26 November comes once again, reminding us of the Constitution. The question is our Constitution under siege by the present regime? And did that siege begin with Mrs. Gandhi? At one level, that appears to be a good observation. But there can be a better observation with your permission. And that is, the Constitution as a document came into life in 1950. We became Republic. 1949, the document was ready. But it was in the making, and that is for a very long time. And I would say the making of a humanistic society in India goes back to all the way to Alvars and the Bhakti poets who were fighting caste, who were fighting Varna, and the entire independence movement. Our independence movement was, though historians call it national independence movement, it was not for the making of a nation, but for making of an independent India, whatever it would be. The question of making it a nation was logical, obvious. It came in, and it was tackled by the makers of, by the freedom fighters of our time, who had gone to, I mean, Indira Gandhi, of course, is a blot. That emergency, it was removed. The emergency, I don't justify, nobody should justify, nobody at all should justify it, even if some people provide justification to it. But after it was removed, she went back to the constitutional form of government by allowing institutions to continue to flourish. The Sahitya Academy, the Lalit Kala Academy, the science, the institutions of IITs and so on. Students of JNU said that she should not enter the campus again, and she did not actually. In this time, all the institutions have been made completely subservient to the will of the ruler. So Indira Gandhi's emergency was emergency within the framework of the Constitution, though it was against the Constitution. Of course, it was. Today, it is hegemony. The leader doesn't have to do anything, but his people who have succumbed to his desires and wishes will go out and do mob lynching. Now that was not the case of this 75. I'm not trying to say that two are radically different, but I'm trying to say that the present phase of that is just horrible, and it is the siege of the Constitution, but siege of citizenry completely. And that the siege to the Constitution can be broken if the citizenry wakes up and decides to think of who they are and what is their role in the and it cannot happen through revolutions. I mean, I said at one place when I was speaking that the light shining on such uprisings is normally short-lived. We will have to do it, and our greatest weapon, Ambedkar said that if it is in the hands of good people, it will work well. If it in the hands of bad people, it will not work well. Our greatest weapon for that transformation is the constitution. I believe in this. Very soon, the delimitation will come, and
Okay,
if
sir.
we
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful.
So
we
in that regard, there is a question then actually um, that somebody just said that how long the Indian populace will allow this vote buying. It is under constitution, everything is going. I think it is the fourth election on same line plus probably another coming soon. So it is all done under these agencies, under constitution, apparently under the rule of law. But they have found a formula and it keeps on coming from Maharashtra to Bihar. It's
yeah.
unbelievable that, anybody can win anything.
Yeah, I mean, Pushparaj will certainly will have a very good answer to this, but let me take my chance. We need to turn our attention from what a minister is doing and what a ministry is doing, and what follies they have and what comical traits they have, and turn our attention in a very serious way to the idea of representation of people. The element is there. First past the goal has brought very strange governments in our to power in our country. We will have to turn our attention to the reforming the representation of people in many ways. There are several ways, and time is short, so I won't get into those details. But very soon, as I was saying, we will face the question of delimitation, and that's going to be an overwhelming question for the regime, for the political parties, and for the citizens. I'll stop there and invite my friend Pushparaj to speak. And if
Thanks, Professor.
Apurva, if
Yeah,
Dr. Apurvanand is here, I think he should speak.
yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. No, I agree. This is a very valid point. It's a complicated question because we have been on the front line on this one. One is that I think many things, at least on socioeconomic, political deliverables, progressive parties have set the bar so low that, frankly speaking, these right-wing governments really don't have much of a bar to deliver on. It's like the bare minimum. So it's very easy and it's very convenient to then give this some kind of populist dole or handouts right at the eve of the election. And frankly speaking, the more and more we talk to people, ordinary people who vote on these lines, it seems that they have sort of resigned themselves to the fact that parties across partisan lines are not so interested in their welfare, and that their lives exist and thrive in spite of the Indian state, in spite of the political system. So they use elections as an extractive mechanism to maximize their gains because they know for a fact that next 5 years kuch hona nahi hai. Now this is something that this is something that we keep arguing, that we really can make a difference by setting the bar higher. If we genuinely establish a model of government where power is not a means and ends in itself, that you are genuinely deploying the mechanisms, institutions of the state in the service of the people, as Professor Devy has been arguing. If we are able to substantively further and extend civic rights and freedoms, either through programs or policies or legislation, I genuinely feel we will be able to put a cut to that. But the thing is that some government, some chief minister somewhere will stand up and have to do something. I know this is a very elitist top-down kind of view, that it ultimately boils down to leadership. But I think that if somewhere a beginning is made, there will eventually begin to be a sort of you heighten expectations from society. That's I think that is my solution to this particular problem.
If the
But
center,
I wouldn't blame the citizen for trying to maximize his or her gains when in the face of an unresponsive and in many cases an insensitive state / political system.
so you will say the government in the center obviously is manipulating all these, but some of the regional, like the state machinery, is in a position hand. Are they doing a better job as it
I
is?
don't think so. I don't think so.
So if
I
they
think they
are,
could be doing much better.
if they are not doing anything as a role model or as a opening the eye, okay, look here, we are doing better. How the citizen will be able to do anything?
Exactly. I mean, this is a very valid point. Professor Devy knows, he's in Karnataka. He works. He has a lot of influence on the government there, and I know how frustrating it can be to push through progressive causes and policies there. But you're right. I mean, literally, the citizen is choosing between the lesser of two evils.
So
I mean,
is Karnataka government better for its citizen than the Maharashtra government?
I mean,
Although those
I
are
would say it's marginally better, at least in terms of social justice and some women welfare schemes. It is sort of better, but I wouldn't. I mean, this is not something that I would notch as a top rate government.
so
Uh,
how
we
this how the citizen goes, where to go?
That is the point. The point is that, see, one can keep the citizen right now is floundering from place to place and looking for the best possible alternative, and he or she is choosing between the lesser of two evils, which is really like Hobson's choice. I think, frankly speaking, as civil society organizations, as people who have a deep abiding concern, like all of us do, for the constitutional framework, we need to start influencing and pressurizing these governments to do better, to be better. I think Devi sir knows. I hope he's here. He has been trying a lot to do this, and to some degree of success. And with your collective influence, I'm sure something can be done. But maybe I can ask Devi sir to sort of also pitch in here.
Well, I will add, thank you, Pushparaj. I will add that if we look at all the parameters for progressive society, collectively for Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and Karnataka, in comparison to Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, UP, Bihar, the southern states appear to be doing better in terms of the place of the citizens in those states and also communal harmony, economic welfare, and educational progress and scientific progress. So, while the difference between the parties is that of degree and not of kind, it is obvious, it should be obvious to an observer that the parties that are ruling the southern states have something better to offer to the people of India. Now, why not all states choose or people of all states choose that kind of government? The answer is complex, complicated, as Pushparaj put it. There's a lot of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustani rhetoric, which is essentially this hyper nationalism, which is essentially a mask that a non state actor wears to gain legitimacy. So, citizens will have to rise against non state actors and bring a new consciousness. That's a slow process, a deep process, and pervasive process, and it cannot be expected in a single day. We are here, we're in bad times,
But
but if we are conscious, I mean, this is Buddhist solution. If we are
but you're,
conscious of
but you're saying no revolution, and citizens have to rise. How is this possible? When citizens rise, they
no,
change.
no, I'm not talking of rising in the sense of Sri what
No, no,
happened
no.
in Sri or Nepal. I'm thinking of rising the consciousness. It is possible through thought, through action, through examples, as it was possible in the times of Prophet Muhammad for him, or Jesus Christ in his times, or Gandhi in his times, it is still possible because we're still humans, human society with human needs and human consciousness. Is the answer ready at, can it be shown uh, as a sample or example? The answer is no. But is the answer absent? The answer to that question is no, no, it's not absent. It is for us, each one of us. I mean, what you are doing is the beginning of that. What Pushparaj is doing is the beginning of that. What I am doing is the beginning of that. All of this will culminate. Just as the Bhakti movement, the Sufi movement, and the freedom fight culminated in the constitution, all of these efforts will culminate into a solution, a collective solution. It will come because we are moving forward and not going backward.
Okay, sir, don't go away. There is one senior diplomat here, ex-diplomat. He is very restless in putting his thoughts here. Ambassador Ishrat Aziz. Ji Ishrat bhai.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Razi?
Yes. Everybody.
Because, yeah, last time I somehow got disconnected.
So you can communicate with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I have really a remark and then a question. In fact, I have two remarks and two questions, though there is very little time left. One is, as I said in my comments, that opponents succeed when proponents fail. And it's my very considered view that we have let down both democracy and secularism. I'm not saying we have deliberately tried to damage it, but we have not done enough to prove to the people that they work and that they bring benefits to the people. The second is, I believe that it is important to distinguish between citizen and national. And we all tend to use the two terms kind of as meaning the same thing. It's not so. National is something that is still undefined. Citizenship is defined and it is there in the Constitution. And if you ask me if so and so is a citizen, I'll say yes or no. But if you say, is he a national? Unless he's a citizen, I'll have to say, I don't know whether he's a national or not, because nationalism brings in identity. We do not talk of national as somebody who is a citizen. We bring in the element of identity, and that is very dangerous and damaging. So I would like to know whether I have made myself clear to the speakers, and what I say, is it important? Thank you.
Janab Aziz, आप crystal clear है.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I cannot think of any greater clarity in what you say, and I feel happy that the burden of my statement actually revolved around this kind of distinction between nationalism and being citizens. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It means a lot to me.
Good. All right. So I think we have almost reached 2 hours, and you must be very tired now by now with this engagement. I wish Apurananji had also joined, but somehow he remains joined, but I think he's either inactive due to some device problem or something. So let's end it here. It was a great discussion here. Many questions were raised. One of the very important points that somebody mentioned is this: what Rahul Gandhi is these days saying, vote chori. So this has become a real issue. I mean, if anybody can see this in Bihar, recent Bihar election, the crowd, the enormous activity and the energy in the opposition camp, and they end up in 30 or 40 seats. This is something very clearly explained that, you can't win. So there is a real frustration. One has to give a talk on this issue. This is a democracy totally getting imprisoned. You can't do anything. So, I mean, these are many things. The other thing is, who are the leaders that common citizens should follow? There is no Vinoba Bhave, there is no Jayaprakash, there is no Nehru or Ambedkar or Gandhi. Who are they? I mean, a non-political, suppose, or very political conscious, morally very strong. Where are they? So common citizen is looking around, not finding them, but a lot of WhatsApp groups have come up with their set agenda that a certain type of people go there and keep on posting. But there's no debate. There's really no genuine debate open on anything. I mean, we are observing it. That is the frustrating part. Anyway, so with all that, thank you so much, Devy ji. Thank you so much, Deshpande Saab. And this is recorded. It will be in public.